I'm Madison Reynolds, 24 years old, and I never thought I'd have to call the police on my own family. But when I walked outside on that clear Tuesday morning and found my brand new car missing from my driveway, everything changed. After my initial panic, I called my parents to see if they knew anything. That's when my dad casually mentioned they had taken my car and given it to my younger sister, Amber. I reached for my phone with trembling hands and did something I never thought I would do to my own family. I dialed 911. Before I dive into my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and stick around to see what happens when family crosses the line between favoritism and theft. My journey to car ownership wasn't easy. Since turning 18, I've worked 2 jobs simultaneously, waitressing at a local diner during the day and doing data entry for an insurance company at night. Unlike some of my friends who had their cars handed to them on their 16th birthdays, complete with giant bows and Instagram photo ops, I knew early on that anything I wanted would come from my own hard work. For 3 years, I put away every extra penny. No vacations, no expensive dinners out, and certainly no designer clothes. My friends would tease me about my strict budget, but I had my eye on the prize. I wanted a Subaru Outback, reliable, practical, and perfect for the frequent camping trips I love to take. Each month when I transferred money to my savings account, I'd look at the Subaru website, imagining myself behind the wheel. I researched obsessively. I read consumer reports, joined Outback forums, and even befriended a mechanic at the local dealership. When I finally hit my savings goal of $22,000, I spent another 2 weeks visiting different dealerships, comparing prices and features. My thoroughness paid off when I found a slightly used 2023 Outback with only 5,000 miles on it for $4,000 less than the new model price. The day I drove it off the lot was the proudest day of my life. The forest green exterior and tan leather interior were exactly what I had envisioned. The salesman, Tim, even commented that he'd never seen someone so young be so methodical about a purchase. I remember running my fingers over the steering wheel, hardly believing it was mine. 100% mine, purchased with my money, registered in my name, insured by my policy. When I drove it to my parents' house for our weekly Sunday dinner, I expected at least a modest celebration. Instead, my mom glanced out the window and said, "Green? That's an odd color choice." My dad barely looked up from his football game to acknowledge it. Only my grandmother Ruth smiled and whispered, "I'm proud of you, sweetie." My sister Amber, however, couldn't hide her reaction. At 22, she had never held a job for more than 3 months. Our parents had bought her a used Honda when she turned 16, which she had wrecked within 6 months. They replaced it with another car, which she subsequently sold to fund a trip to Cancun with her friends. Now, seeing me pull up in a newer, nicer vehicle than anything she'd had, her eyes narrowed. "Can I take it for a spin?" she asked immediately, hand already outstretched for the keys. "Not today," I replied carefully. "I'm still getting used to it myself." "Don't be selfish, Madison," my mother chimed in. "It wouldn't hurt to share." "It's not about sharing, Mom. It's a brand new car that I'm still learning to drive. Maybe in a few weeks." My father finally looked up from his game. "Your sister needs reliable transportation for job interviews. You should be more supportive." I bit my tongue, remembering the 4 reliable vehicles they'd already provided Amber, none of which had lasted under her care. Still, I kept my voice level. "This is my car. I paid for it. I'll decide when and if anyone else drives it." The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, but I stood my ground. Looking back, I should have recognized their reactions as the first warning signs. The subtle manipulation, the implied obligation, the dismissal of my boundaries, all patterns that had been present throughout my childhood, but that I was only now learning to identify and resist. What I didn't know then was that this conversation was just the beginning. That my hard-earned achievement had triggered something in my family's dynamics that would ultimately lead to betrayal I couldn't have imagined. To understand why my parents would steal my car, You need to understand our family history. In our household, there had always been a clear favorite, and it wasn't me. From the time Amber was born when I was 2 years old, she became the center of our family universe. It started with small things. When relatives visited, Amber would receive twice as many presents. At dinner, she got the larger portion of dessert. If we both asked to participate in an activity, her request was prioritized. My parents explained this away with various excuses. Amber's more sensitive. She needs more encouragement. Or my personal favorite, you're just more independent, Madison. By age 10, I understood my role in the family. I was expected to be responsible, self-sufficient, and accommodating. When Amber broke my science project the night before it was due, I stayed up all night remaking it while my parents comforted her because she felt bad. When she wanted the bedroom with the bay window, I was moved into the smaller room without discussion. When she wanted to join the same dance class as me, my one special activity, I was told to help her catch up, even though it meant sacrificing my own progress. The most painful memory came on my 16th birthday. My parents had promised me a special dinner at my favorite restaurant. The day arrived, and I dressed up, excited for the rare attention. But at the last minute, Amber had a meltdown about not being invited to a classmate's party. My birthday dinner was canceled so my parents could console her. They ordered pizza instead, which Amber chose, despite my hatred of mushrooms. I ate cereal in my room that night, fighting back tears. Through therapy, I've come to recognize this as classic golden child divided by scapegoat dynamics. Dr. Lindsay, my therapist, helped me understand that this wasn't my fault and that the pattern would continue unless I established firm boundaries. And I had been working on that, slowly but surely. After college, which I paid for myself through scholarships and loans while Amber's education was fully funded by our parents, I moved into my own apartment and limited my contact with family to weekly dinners and occasional phone calls. I started declining last-minute requests to drive Amber places or lend her money. Each boundary was met with guilt trips and accusations of being selfish or not part of the family, but I stood firm. This newfound backbone came to a head during our last Christmas gathering. Amber announced she had quit her receptionist job because the manager was mean. My parents immediately began discussing which of their friends might have openings for her. When they suggested I should ask my boss at the insurance company, I refused. Amber needs to find her own job, I said quietly but firmly. I'm not risking my professional reputation. The room went silent. My Uncle Jim, my father's brother, raised his eyebrows in surprise. No one typically contradicted my parents when it came to helping Amber. My mother recovered first. I can't believe how callous you've become, Madison, she said. Family helps family. I agree, I replied. But help doesn't mean doing everything for someone. It means supporting them and doing things for themselves. Amber stormed out of the room, and my father followed to console her. My mother gave me a cold look before joining them. Only my grandmother and Uncle Jim remained at the table with me. About time, Uncle Jim muttered, raising his glass slightly in my direction. Looking back, I see how this moment shifted our family dynamic. For the first time, I had publicly challenged the established order, and while it felt empowering, it also set the stage for escalation. My parents and sister were not going to relinquish control easily. But even knowing what I know now, I wouldn't change my response that day. It was the first step toward the self-respect I'd been missing for 24 years. I'll never forget the moment I discovered my car was missing. It was a Tuesday morning, and I had an early meeting at the insurance office. I'd packed my lunch the night before, ironed my blouse, and set my alarm 30 minutes early to avoid rush hour traffic. Everything was planned perfectly. When I stepped outside my apartment building at 7:15 a.m., coffee tumbler in hand, I initially thought I had forgotten where I parked. I circled the small lot, checking each row, my heart rate increasing with every step. But deep down, I knew I hadn't forgotten. I always parked in the same spot, right under the security light. My car was gone. I rushed back inside and checked through my windows, thinking maybe I was looking in the wrong section of the parking lot. Nothing. I called the building manager, Frank, to ask if any vehicles had been towed overnight. None had been. My hands trembled as I dialed the non-emergency police number to report a possible theft, then called my neighbor Bailey to see if she had noticed anything suspicious. I saw headlights around 11:30 last night, Bailey told me. I assumed it was you going out. I hadn't gone anywhere. Someone had taken my car while I slept. As I waited for the police, I called my parents not because I thought they would know anything, but because I needed support. My father answered on the fourth ring. "Dad, my car's been stolen," I blurted, fighting back tears. "I've called the police, but I don't know what else to do." There was a pause. Too long a pause. "Your car's not stolen, Madison," he finally said, his tone dismissive. "We picked it up last night." I nearly dropped my phone. "You what?" Amber needed reliable transportation for her new job. That hostess position at Riverfront Grill. It starts today. The world seemed to tilt sideways. "You took my car without asking me? How did you even get the keys?" Another pause. "Your mother found your spare set when she was over helping you organize last month." A cold realization washed over me. The day my mother had helped me organize my apartment, rearranging things without asking, criticizing my storage solutions, she had been searching for my spare keys. The invasion of privacy made me physically ill. "That's stealing," I said, my voice hollow. "You stole my car." My father's tone hardened. "Don't be dramatic. We're family. Besides, you can take the bus to work." "Amber can't take a bus to Riverfront. It's not on the route." "I'm not taking the bus. That's my car. I paid for it. I need it. Bring it back immediately." "Now you're just being selfish," he replied. "Amber has already left for her first day. We're not going to ruin this opportunity for her because you're throwing a tantrum." As if on cue, my phone pinged with a text from Amber. It was a photo of her standing beside my car in the Riverfront Grill parking lot with the caption, "Thanks for the wheels, sis. Don't worry, I'll take good care of it." She was wearing my spare sunglasses, which I kept in the glove compartment. Something inside me snapped. Years of accommodation, of coming second, of having my belongings taken without permission, all of it crystallized into a moment of absolute clarity. "Dad, listen carefully," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You have 2 hours to return my car to my apartment, or I'm reporting it stolen to the police." He laughed. Actually laughed. "Madison, be reasonable. No officer is going to arrest family members over borrowing a car. It's not borrowing if you didn't ask permission. It's theft. 2 hours." I hung up before he could respond and immediately received a call from my mother. I declined it and the 5 subsequent attempts. Then came the texts. "Mom, answer your phone, young lady." "Mom, you're breaking your father's heart with this behavior." "Mom, after everything we've done for you." "Mom, Amber needs this car for her career." "Mom, if you can't think about anyone but yourself, maybe you're not the daughter we raised." That last one nearly broke me. It was so typical of their manipulation, implying that being a good daughter meant having no boundaries, no possessions that couldn't be commandeered for Amber's benefit. 2 hours passed. No car, no apology. Just more texts trying to make me feel guilty. I sat on my couch, staring at the wall, weighing my options. If I backed down now, I would be sending the message that it was acceptable to take my things without permission. If I followed through on my threat, I would be crossing a line from which there might be no return. With shaking hands, I picked up my phone and dialed 911. "I need to report a stolen vehicle," I said when the operator answered. And with those words, I changed the course of my family relationships forever. The 2 police officers who responded to my call, Officer Ramirez and Officer Bennett, initially seemed skeptical. As I explained that my parents had taken my car without permission and given it to my sister, I could see the look they exchanged. This was clearly not the typical theft case they were used to handling. "Miss Reynolds," Officer Bennett said carefully, "family disputes over property are usually civil matters, not criminal ones." "This isn't a dispute," I replied firmly. "I own the car. I have the title in my name. I did not give anyone permission to take it. That's theft, regardless of who did it. I provided them with all the documentation, the title in my name, proof of insurance, the purchase agreement from the dealership, even my bank statements showing the payments coming from my account. I also showed them the text from Amber with the photo of her with my car. "And you're certain you want to pursue criminal charges?" Officer Ramirez asked. "Against your family?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, they need to understand that my property is mine. If they had asked to borrow it, we could have discussed it. But they stole my keys and took my car in the middle of the night. That's a crime." After confirming the car's description and plate number, they agreed to drive to the Riverfront Grill to investigate. I asked to accompany them, which they reluctantly allowed after I pointed out that I would need to drive my car home if they recovered it. The drive to the restaurant was silent and tense. I sat in the back of the patrol car, wondering if I was overreacting. Then I remembered the dismissive laugh from my father, my mother's manipulative texts, and Amber's entitled attitude. No, I wasn't overreacting. I was finally standing up for myself. When we pulled into the Riverfront Grill parking lot, my forest green Outback was prominently visible near the entrance. My heart raced as we approached the hostess stand inside, where Amber was checking reservations on an iPad. Her smile dropped when she saw me flanked by 2 police officers. "Madison? What's going on?" Her eyes darted between us nervously. Officer Bennett took the lead. "Miss Reynolds, we're investigating a report of a stolen vehicle. The green Subaru Outback parked outside. Can you tell us how you came to be driving it today?" Amber's face flushed. "That's my car. Well, it's our family car. My parents gave it to me for my new job." "That's not accurate," I interjected. "It's my car. I purchased it with my own money. My name is on the title. You took it without permission." Amber's manager, a tall woman with a severe bun, approached. "Is there a problem here?" "Yes," Officer Ramirez replied. "We're investigating a stolen vehicle report." "It's not stolen." Amber's voice rose, attracting attention from nearby diners. "Mom and Dad said I could use it. Tell them, Madison. Tell them we're sisters. Tell them it's a misunderstanding." I kept my voice level. "It's not a misunderstanding. You knew that car was mine. You knew I didn't give permission for you to take it. That's why you and our parents snuck over in the middle of the night instead of asking me directly." Amber's eyes welled with tears, her go-to response when things didn't go her way. "I needed it for my job. You're just being selfish." Before I could respond, my parents burst through the restaurant doors. My mother rushed to Amber's side, while my father confronted the officers. "This is ridiculous," he announced loudly. "You can't arrest someone for using a family vehicle. Madison is just being dramatic. She always has been." Officer Bennett maintained his professional demeanor. "Sir, if the vehicle is registered to your daughter Madison, and she didn't give permission for anyone else to use it, then legally it was stolen." "We're her parents," my mother interjected. "We have every right—" "No, you don't," Officer Ramirez cut in. "Once your daughter is an adult and has purchased property in her own name, you have no legal right to take that property without permission, regardless of your relationship." My father's face reddened. "This is absurd. We raised her, we fed her, clothed her, put a roof over her head. And this is how she repays us? By calling the police over a car?" "A car that I bought," I said quietly, "with money I earned, working 2 jobs for 3 years." The restaurant had gone silent, everyone watching the drama unfold. Amber's tears had escalated to sobs, and my mother was glaring at me with naked hatred. For a moment, I almost backed down. The weight of 24 strangers' stares, the lifetime of conditioning to put Amber first, the fear of permanent family rupture, it all pressed down on me. But then, Officer Bennett asked to see the car keys, and Amber reluctantly handed them over. He examined the key fob, noting, "These aren't even copies. These are the original spare keys." Something in his tone told me he understood. He had seen through the manipulation, the gaslighting, the family dynamics at play. He wasn't just going through the motions anymore. "Amber Reynolds," he said formally, I'm placing you under arrest for possession of stolen property. You have the right to remain silent." As he continued reading her rights, my mother lunged toward me. Officer Ramirez stepped between us. "Don't you dare!" my mother hissed at me. "Don't you dare let them take her. Drop the charges right now." "I can't," I whispered, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. "This has to stop. All of it." As they led Amber out in handcuffs, my father pointed a finger at me. "You're no longer our daughter. Do you understand me? This is unforgivable." I stood there, shaking but upright, as they followed the officers out. Through the window, I watched as Amber was placed in the patrol car, my parents gesticulating wildly beside it. Officer Ramirez returned and handed me my keys. "Are you okay to drive? You seem pretty shaken up." I nodded, clutching the keys so tightly they bit into my palm. "I'll be fine. Thank you for taking this seriously." "Family theft is still theft," she replied simply. "And for what it's worth, you did the right thing. People who love you don't take what's yours without asking." I drove home alone, my car once again mine, but the victory hollow and painful. I had stood my ground, but at what cost? The family I had known was gone. In its place was uncertainty, anger, and the long road of rebuilding my life without the approval I had sought for so long. The next 48 hours brought a tsunami of family reactions. My phone nearly exploded with messages and calls, some supportive, most hostile. Amber had been released the same day on her own recognizance, pending a court date. According to the one family member still speaking to me civilly, Uncle Jim, my parents had been beside themselves with outrage, calling every relative to report my betrayal. Cousin Natalie. "How could you do this to your own sister? She was arrested at her job." Aunt Deborah. "Your mother is in tears. I hope you're happy with yourself." Uncle Roger. "Always knew you were trouble, but this takes the cake." The messages stung, especially since none of these people had ever intervened when I was being treated unfairly. But there were surprising allies, too. Uncle Jim texted me privately. "Uncle Jim, stood your ground, proud of you. Your dad did the same thing to me with my motorcycle in college. Never forgave him." And my grandmother Ruth called, speaking in a whisper. "I can't talk long. Your grandfather doesn't know I'm calling. But I want you to know I understand why you did what you did. They've always taken advantage of your good nature. Just be careful, sweetheart. They're very angry." The family drama spilled onto social media when Amber posted a tearful selfie with the caption, "When your own sister gets you arrested because she won't share with family. Heartbroken, betrayed." My cousins and aunts commented with sympathy and outrage on my behalf. Someone even tagged my workplace, suggesting people boycott the insurance company for employing someone so heartless. The lowest point came the following evening when I received a collect call from the county jail. Against my better judgment, I accepted it. "Madison?" Amber's voice was thick with tears. "Please drop the charges. Please. They're saying I could have a criminal record. I could lose my job. No one will hire me. My life will be ruined." "You should have thought about that before taking my car," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom and Dad said it was okay. I didn't know it was wrong." "Amber, you're 22 years old. You knew it was my car. You knew I hadn't given permission. You even texted me a photo gloating about it." Her voice hardened slightly. "So that's it? You're really going to do this to your only sister? After everything our family has done for you?" The familiar guilt trip almost worked, almost. Then I remembered all the times I'd given in, all the times I'd sacrificed my needs for Amber's wants. All the times I'd been told that being a good sister, a good daughter, meant having nothing that couldn't be taken from me at a moment's notice. "Yes, I'm really doing this. Actions have consequences, Amber. Maybe it's time you learned that." Her sobs intensified. "You'll regret this. When you need family someday, no one will be there for you." I ended the call, trembling but resolute. The first family gathering after the arrest was my cousin Tyler's birthday party. I almost didn't attend, but Uncle Jim convinced me I shouldn't isolate myself. "Don't give them the satisfaction," he said. The moment I walked into my aunt's backyard, A hush fell over the assembled relatives. My mother, holding court near the grill, deliberately turned her back. My father pretended to be deeply engaged in conversation with my grandfather. Amber wasn't there apparently. The humiliation of her arrest was too great for her to show her face. I was about to leave when Aunt Rachel approached me. As my mother's sister, I expected more condemnation, but her expression was conflicted. "Can we talk?" she asked, gesturing toward the side of the house. Once we were alone, she sighed deeply. "Look, Madison, I'm not taking sides here, but this has gone too far. Your parents are talking about cutting you out of the will, filing a lawsuit for emotional distress, even claiming you stole the car from them originally." "That's ridiculous," I replied. "I have all the paperwork proving I purchased it." I know. But they're not thinking rationally right now." She hesitated. "Would it really be so terrible to drop the charges? For the sake of family peace?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "Aunt Rachel, did you know they took my college fund and gave it to Amber when I was 17? $25,000 that my grandparents had set aside for me?" Her eyes widened. "What?" "No, I didn't. I found out when I applied for financial aid. The account had been emptied 2 years earlier. When I confronted them, they said Amber needed it more because she wasn't scholarship material like me." "Madison, I had no idea. No one did. I worked 3 jobs during college. I graduated with $40,000 in student loans while Amber dropped out after 2 semesters with no debt." My voice remained steady. "So no, I won't drop the charges. Not this time." Aunt Rachel was silent for a long moment. "I always thought," she began, then stopped. "The way your mother talked, you were always the difficult one, the selfish one. That's what they wanted everyone to believe." She nodded slowly. "I think I need to reevaluate some things." By the end of the party, a subtle shift had occurred. Uncle Jim openly sat with me at the picnic table. Cousin Drew brought me a plate of food when I was too uncomfortable to approach the buffet where my parents stood guard. Even my grandfather, typically oblivious to family dynamics, asked gruffly if I was doing okay with everything. The family was far from united behind me, but cracks were forming in the solid wall of opposition. For the first time, others were beginning to see what I had experienced for years. It wasn't vindication, the situation was too painful for that, but it was the first glimmer of validation I had ever received from my extended family. As I was leaving, Uncle Jim walked me to my car. "You know," he said quietly, "your dad gave your college fund to Amber because he did the same thing to me. Our parents left money for both of us. He took my portion for a down payment on their first house. Said he'd pay me back. Never did." The revelation stunned me. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" He shrugged. "Family peace. But looking at you now, I wish I had. Might have broken the cycle sooner." I drove home with that thought echoing in my mind. Breaking the cycle. That's exactly what I was trying to do, no matter how painful the process. 2 weeks after the arrest, I met with the county prosecutor, Miss Harmon, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who specialized in property crimes. She reviewed my case file with brisk efficiency. "Family theft cases are always complicated," she noted, looking up from the paperwork. "Juries tend to be sympathetic to the 'it's just family' defense, even when the law is clear. Are you certain you want to proceed?" "Yes," I replied. "This isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a pattern." She nodded. "I suspected as much. Most people don't call the police on family over a first offense." I learned that my parents had hired Sherman Wallace, one of the most expensive criminal defense attorneys in the county, to represent Amber. Within days, I received a call from him. "Miss Reynolds," his smooth voice oozed confidence, "I believe we can resolve this unfortunate situation without further legal proceedings. Your sister is prepared to apologize, and your parents are willing to compensate you for any inconvenience." "The inconvenience of having my property stolen?" I asked. Now, he chuckled. "Such harsh terminology for a family misunderstanding. I'm sure you don't want to see your sister with a permanent criminal record over a borrowed car." His condescending tone made my skin crawl. It wasn't borrowed. It was taken without permission. And yes, I do want to see consequences, Mr. Wallace. Not out of vengeance, but because without them, this behavior will continue. His tone chilled. Be reasonable, Miss Reynolds. This could get very unpleasant. Family secrets have a way of coming to light in court proceedings. The thinly veiled threat only strengthened my resolve. I have nothing to hide, Mr. Wallace. Does my sister? The first court appearance was set for a Tuesday morning. I took the day off work and arrived early, dressed in a conservative navy blue suit. The courtroom was mostly empty, but my heart dropped when I saw my parents and Amber already seated in the front row. Amber looked pale and drawn in a modest gray dress I'd never seen before, clearly purchased to make her appear demure and vulnerable. My mother clutched her hand tightly. My father stared straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge my presence. Miss Harmon met me outside and briefed me quickly. They're going to push for dismissal. The defense will paint you as vindictive and ungrateful. Stay calm, stick to the facts, and let me handle the legal arguments. When our case was called, Amber approached the defendant's table with Mr. Wallace. The judge, an older woman with steel gray hair and piercing eyes, reviewed the charges. Amber Reynolds, you are charged with possession of stolen property, a Class A misdemeanor. How do you plead? Not guilty, Your Honor, Mr. Wallace answered smoothly, and we move for immediate dismissal of all charges. This is clearly a family matter that has been grossly exaggerated. The judge glanced at the paperwork. On what grounds do you seek dismissal, Counselor? Your Honor, my client had every reason to believe she had permission to use the vehicle. Her parents facilitated access to the car for a legitimate purpose, transportation to employment. This is, at most, a civil dispute between sisters. Miss Harmon countered. The facts are clear, Your Honor. The vehicle belongs solely to my client. It was taken without her knowledge or consent in the middle of the night, using spare keys that were obtained without permission. This meets all elements of the crime charged. The judge turned to me. Miss Reynolds, you are pursuing charges against your own sister. Can you explain why this matter couldn't be resolved within your family? I stood, grateful that my voice remained steady. Your Honor, this incident isn't isolated. It's part of a pattern of my boundaries being violated and my property being taken without consent. I made it explicitly clear that no one had permission to use my vehicle, which I purchased entirely with my own funds. Despite this, my parents took my spare keys without my knowledge and facilitated the taking of my car. The judge nodded thoughtfully, then turned to Amber. Miss Reynolds, the younger, did you understand that the vehicle belonged to your sister? Amber's eyes filled with tears. Yes, but my parents said it was okay. They said family shares. I needed it for my new job. Madison has always been selfish with her things. I bit my tongue at the familiar accusation. The judge seemed unimpressed by the tears. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds, she addressed my parents in the gallery. Did you give your daughter permission to take a vehicle that did not belong to you? My father stood, straightening his tie. Your Honor, in our family, we don't obsess over who owns what. We help each other. Madison has been unusually possessive since childhood. We were simply trying to facilitate Amber's employment opportunity. So you admit you took the keys without the owner's permission and facilitated the taking of the vehicle? The judge clarified. We didn't steal anything, my mother interjected. We raised Madison. We've given her everything. One car is hardly... Mrs. Reynolds, the judge cut her off. Ownership doesn't transfer from children to parents. If the vehicle is registered to your elder daughter, only she has the legal right to determine its use. Mr. Wallace attempted to redirect. Your Honor, perhaps a family counseling referral would be more appropriate than criminal charges. The judge considered this for a moment, but before she could respond, Miss Harmon produced a document. Your Honor, I'd like to enter this into evidence. These are text messages between the defendant and her parents the night before the vehicle was taken. My heart raced. This was news to me. The judge reviewed the printout, her expression darkening. She read aloud, Amber, what if Madison won't let me take the car? Father, she doesn't need to know. We'll get the spare keys while she's at work tomorrow. Amber, won't she be mad? Mother, she'll get over it. She always does. Better to ask forgiveness than permission. Amber, okay, but if she calls the police or something, I'm blaming you guys, lol. Father, she wouldn't dare. She knows better than to go against family. A heavy silence fell over the courtroom. Even Mr. Wallace seemed momentarily at a loss for words. The judge removed her glasses. Mr. Wallace, given this evidence of premeditation and awareness of wrongdoing, I'm denying your motion to dismiss. This case will proceed to trial unless a plea agreement is reached. She turned to Amber. Young lady, I suggest you consider your options carefully. These messages indicate you were fully aware what you were doing might be illegal. As we exited the courtroom, Mr. Wallace intercepted Miss Harmon. After a brief, intense conversation, Miss Harmon approached me. They want to discuss a plea deal. Amber would plead guilty to a lesser charge of unauthorized use of a vehicle, serve 100 hours of community service, pay restitution for any damage to your car, and write you a formal apology. I considered the offer. Would she have a record? Yes, but she could apply to have it expunged after 2 years of good behavior. I thought about Amber's tears in the courtroom, my parents' unwavering support of her despite clear evidence of wrongdoing. Nothing about their behavior suggested real understanding or remorse, just anger at being caught and facing consequences. I'll accept the plea deal on one condition, I decided. The community service has to be at a women's shelter or similar organization where she'll learn about healthy boundaries and relationships. Miss Harmon smiled slightly. That's unusually thoughtful, given the circumstances. I'll see if they'll agree. They did. The following week, Amber formally accepted the plea deal. As she stood before the judge, pleading guilty in a small, subdued voice, I felt no triumph, only a profound sadness that it had come to this. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a statement, I declined. There was nothing to say that hadn't already been said. Outside the courthouse, I caught a glimpse of Amber being hustled to my parents' car, her shoulders slumped in defeat. My mother shot me a venomous look over her shoulder. My father didn't look back at all. I walked to my car alone, the weight of family broken beyond simple repair heavy on my shoulders, but with the strange lightness of finally standing up for myself. I hoped the legal resolution would be the end of it, but I underestimated my family's capacity for retaliation. The first sign came when my supervisor called me into her office with a concerned expression. Madison, we've received some concerning calls about you. Someone claiming to be your mother has contacted several clients suggesting you have substance abuse issues that might compromise their accounts. My blood ran cold. That's absolutely false. I've never had substance abuse problems. I know, she assured me. Your work is impeccable, but I needed to make you aware of the situation. The campaign didn't stop there. Friends reported receiving strange messages from my concerned family about my mental health crisis and pathological lying. My landlord received an anonymous letter claiming I was running an illegal business from my apartment. I documented everything, changing my phone number and strengthening my social media privacy settings. But the real confrontation came 3 weeks after the court case, when I returned home to find Amber waiting outside my apartment door. We need to talk, she said, her voice hard, eyes red-rimmed. Gone was the tearful vulnerability of the courtroom. This was pure, unfiltered rage. Amber, I don't think that's a good idea right now, I replied, keeping my distance. You've ruined my life, she shouted. Do you know what it's like having a criminal record? The community service supervisor treats me like I'm dirt. I lost my job at Riverfront. No one will hire me now. You chose to take my car, I reminded her, trying to keep my voice level. Those are the consequences of your actions. She stepped closer, finger pointed at my face. You chose to call the cops on your own sister. What kind of person does that? Mom and Dad were right about you all along. You're selfish. You're cruel. You're jealous of me. You've always been jealous. Her voice had risen to a shriek, attracting attention from neighbors. As she continued her tirade, I noticed her shifting weight from foot to foot, hands clenching and unclenching. "I think you should leave," I said firmly. "We can talk when you're calmer. Don't tell me what to do." She shoved me hard against the wall, knocking the wind from my lungs. "You think you're better than everyone? You think you can just throw away your family?" As she raised her hand again, my neighbor Bailey's door opened. "Everything okay out here?" she asked, phone visibly in hand. "Should I call someone?" Amber froze, then backed away. "This isn't over," she hissed before storming down the hallway. The next day, I filed for a restraining order. The judge granted it based on the assault and the pattern of harassment. I sent copies to my parents' home and to their respective workplaces, ensuring they couldn't claim ignorance. Their response was to escalate further. I began receiving notices from credit card companies for accounts I hadn't opened. Someone had applied for loans and credit cards in my name, a clear case of identity theft. When I pulled my credit report, I found 6 recent applications, thankfully all denied due to a credit freeze I'd placed years ago after my college roommate's identity was stolen. The police officer who took my identity theft report asked if I had any suspicions about who might be responsible. "My sister," I said, without hesitation. "She has my social security number and would know answers to many security questions." The investigation confirmed my suspicions when the applications were traced to an IP address at my parents' home and security footage showed Amber at a bank trying to open an account in my name. Additional charges were filed, violating her probation from the car theft case. But the most shocking incident came a week later. I arrived home from work to find police cars surrounding my apartment building. My door had been spray painted with the word "thief" in large red letters. The responding officers immediately asked if I had any enemies. I explained the situation with my family and the restraining order. "Miss Reynolds," one officer said carefully, "we received an anonymous tip this morning that you were planning to vandalize your own apartment to frame your sister. The caller seemed to know details about your dispute." I was stunned. "That's ridiculous. I was at work all day. My supervisor and coworkers can confirm that." The officer nodded. "We've already spoken with your workplace. You're not a suspect. But here's where it gets interesting. The security cameras in your building captured the vandalism. The perpetrator was your sister." It was almost too much to process. "She vandalized my door, then tried to frame me for vandalizing my own property to frame her?" "It appears so. And given the restraining order, she's looking at additional serious charges." The next day's newspaper carried a small item. "Local woman arrested for violating restraining order, vandalism, and filing false police report." My family's dirty laundry was becoming increasingly public, each escalation more desperate than the last. Uncle Jim called to warn me that my parents were beside themselves. "They're talking about suing you for defamation, claiming you've orchestrated this whole thing to ruin Amber's life. It's madness, Madison. They can't accept that she's facing consequences for her actions." I increased security at my apartment, installed cameras, and documented every suspicious interaction. The family I had once longed to please now felt like strangers, dangerous strangers, who would stop at nothing to punish me for daring to stand up for myself. Yet even as the situation deteriorated, I found unexpected strength within myself. The Madison, who had accepted mistreatment for the sake of family peace, was gone. In her place was someone who understood her worth, someone who wouldn't be victimized, no matter who was doing the victimizing. 6 weeks after the vandalism incident, I hit my breaking point. The constant vigilance, legal proceedings, and family warfare had taken their toll. I sat on my kitchen floor at 2 a.m., surrounded by legal documents, police reports, and unpaid bills. My legal expenses were mounting despite Miss Harmon's reasonable rates, and simply broke down. The tears wouldn't stop. Years of suppressed hurt, anger, and grief poured out in gut-wrenching sobs. I had stood up for myself, yes, but at what cost? My family was gone. My reputation in the extended family was in tatters. My sister was facing jail time. My parents had become vindictive strangers. Was a car, even one I had worked so hard for, worth all this? In that moment of despair, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica, a coworker who had become a friend throughout the ordeal. "Jessica, you awake? Just checking on you." I wiped my tears enough to respond. Me, barely holding it together, honestly. Her response was immediate. "Jessica, coming over. No arguments, bringing ice cream." True to her word, Jessica arrived 20 minutes later with 2 pints of Ben & Jerry's and a fierce determination to help. She listened as I poured out my doubts and fears, then looked me straight in the eye. "Madison, listen to me. Your family is counting on you to break. They believe you'll eventually decide it's easier to go back to being their doormat than to stand your ground. The question is, are they right?" Her words cut through my fog of self-doubt. Was I willing to surrender everything I'd fought for? To return to a family dynamic where I had no rights, no boundaries, and no respect? "No," I whispered, then more firmly. "No, they're not right." Jessica nodded. "Then you need to keep going. And you don't have to do it alone. Stay at my place for a few days. Let's get you some real therapy sessions, not just the employee assistance program stuff. We'll figure out the financial part." Her offer of concrete help, of not just sympathy but action, was the lifeline I needed. I spent the next week on her couch, returning to my apartment only to pick up necessities. The change of environment provided crucial perspective and breathing room. With Jessica's encouragement, I increased my therapy sessions with Dr. Lindsay and joined a support group for adults from dysfunctional families. For the first time, I heard stories from people who truly understood my experiences, who didn't question why I couldn't just forgive or keep the peace for family's sake. As I was beginning to find my footing again, I received an unexpected letter. Unlike the threatening legal notices and hate mail I'd grown accustomed to, this was handwritten on simple notebook paper, postmarked from the county detention center, where Amber was being held, pending her probation violation hearing. With trembling hands, I opened it. "Madison, I don't expect you to believe anything I say anymore. I wouldn't in your position, but I need to write this anyway. I'm sorry, not because I got caught, though that's how it started. I'm sorry because for the first time in my life, I'm seeing things clearly. The counselor here says I've been part of a toxic family system. That Mom and Dad trained me to believe I was entitled to anything I wanted, including your things. I remember when we were kids and I broke your science project. I knew exactly what I was doing. I was jealous because you got an A and I got a C on mine. Mom and Dad made you fix it and comforted me, even though I was the one who destroyed your work. That pattern continued our whole lives. They made you responsible for everything and me responsible for nothing. That's not an excuse for what I did with your car or afterward. I knew it was wrong. I just didn't care because I never had to face consequences before. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that at least one person in this family is finally seeing the truth. Amber." I read the letter 3 times, searching for the manipulation, the hidden agenda. But it seemed genuine. Could Amber truly be having a moment of clarity? Or was this another ploy? After discussing it with Dr. Lindsay, I decided to visit Amber in detention. The meeting was set for a Thursday afternoon in a sterile visitation room with a corrections officer present. When Amber was let in, I barely recognized her. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect makeup. Her hair was pulled back simply, her face pale and drawn. But it was the look in her eyes that truly shocked me, a clarity I'd never seen before. "You came," she said quietly, sitting across from me. "I didn't think you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted. "Your letter surprised me." She nodded. "I meant what I wrote. The counselor here, she's been helping me see things differently. About Mom and Dad, about you, about myself." She paused. "Did you know Mom and Dad have refused to visit me? They said they won't come until I get back on message and start blaming you again." The revelation stunned me. "They abandoned you the moment you stopped following their script." "Exactly." She looked down at her hands. "They never loved either of us, Madison. They loved the roles we played. You were supposed to be the responsible one who sacrificed everything. I was supposed to be the special one who got everything. The moment we stepped out of those roles, she shrugged helplessly. For the first time in our adult lives, Amber and I had a real conversation. She revealed how our parents had consistently told her that I resented her, was jealous of her, and would try to undermine her if given the chance. Meanwhile, they'd told me that Amber was fragile, needed special treatment, and that any boundaries I set were acts of cruelty toward her. They used to tell me things you supposedly said about me, Amber admitted. Horrible things. I believed them because, why wouldn't I? They were our parents. They did the same to me, I replied. They'd say you thought I was pathetic and boring, that you laughed about me behind my back. We stared at each other. The realization, dawning simultaneously, we had been pitted against each other our entire lives by the very people who should have nurtured our sisterhood. I'm not saying we would have been best friends, Amber said ruefully. We're very different people. But we never had a chance to find out, did we? When our visitation time ended, I found myself doing something I never expected, promising to return. Not out of obligation or guilt, but out of a tentative hope that something genuine might be salvageable from the wreckage of our family. The next day, I received a panicked call from Grandmother Ruth. Your father's had a heart attack. They're at Memorial Hospital. He's asking for you. My stomach dropped. Despite everything, the news hit hard. I drove to the hospital in a daze, emotions warring within me: concern, suspicion, guilt, anger. I found my mother in the cardiac unit waiting room. When she saw me, her expression cycled rapidly through surprise, calculation, and finally settling on grief. He collapsed in the garage, she said, voice quavering. They don't know if he'll make it. The doctor confirmed my father had indeed suffered a heart attack, though a relatively minor one. He was stable and would likely recover fully with medication and lifestyle changes. He's been under tremendous stress, my mother said pointedly when the doctor left. This family situation has nearly killed him. And there it was, the manipulation, the guilt trip, the implication that my boundaries were literally breaking my father's heart. I stood up. I'm glad Dad's going to be okay. I'll check in tomorrow. That's it? She hissed. Your father is in the hospital, and you're just leaving? After everything we've done for you? I looked at her. Really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. The woman who had brought me into this world, who should have protected me, who had instead systematically undermined and devalued me throughout my life. And I felt nothing. Not hatred, not love, just a profound emptiness. Yes, Mom, that's it. As I walked out of the hospital, my phone buzzed with a text from Amber. If Dad's heart attack happened right after you visited me, it's not real. He pulled the same thing when Uncle Jim stood up to him years ago. I stared at the message, pieces clicking into place. The timing, my mother's performance, the doctor's assessment of a minor event. It was manipulation all the way down. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't control my parents' behavior, but I could control my response to it. I would maintain contact with Amber, continue building my support network, and limit interaction with my parents to the absolute minimum necessary. No more explanations, no more justifications, no more seeking their approval or understanding. It wasn't the family reconciliation I had once dreamed of, but it was something far more valuable: the beginning of a life defined by my choices, not their expectations. 6 months after my father's heart attack, my life had transformed in ways both subtle and profound. The most visible change was my car fully repaired after Amber's use had resulted in several dents and a mysterious stain on the passenger seat. The restitution from her plea deal had covered the damages, and driving my Outback now filled me with a quiet pride rather than anxiety. Less visible but more significant were the changes in my relationships. I had maintained limited contact with my parents, brief, cordial interactions at family functions, occasional status updates via text, but nothing approaching our previous enmeshed relationship. They had stopped their campaign of harassment after Amber's second arrest, whether from fear of legal consequences or simply running out of energy for vengeance. I couldn't say. My relationship with Amber, however, had evolved in unexpected ways. Following her release from detention, she had moved into a halfway house, found a job at a local bookstore, and committed to twice-weekly therapy sessions. Our relationship wasn't close to much damage, had been done for instant sisterhood, but it was honest. We met for coffee every few weeks, carefully navigating our shared history while trying to establish something new. Mom called again. Amber told me during one such meeting. Said if I moved back home, they'd pay for me to return to college. And? I asked, stirring my latte. And I told her I'd think about it. But I won't. She looked up from her mug. The strings attached to their help. I can see them now. So clearly. How did I miss them for 22 years? Because we were trained not to see them, I replied. It was normal for us. My therapy with Dr. Lindsay had progressed to addressing not just my family trauma, but how it had affected my other relationships. I had always struggled to form close friendships, fearful that anyone I trusted would eventually take advantage of me as my family had. Romantic relationships had been equally challenging. I either became a doormat or kept partners at such a distance they eventually gave up trying to connect. Healthy relationships require both boundaries and vulnerability, Dr. Lindsay reminded me often. Your family taught you that having boundaries meant you couldn't be vulnerable, and being vulnerable meant you couldn't have boundaries. That's the false dichotomy you're working to unlearn. This insight proved transformative when an unexpected opportunity arose at work, a promotion that would require relocating to our Denver office. The position offered better pay, more responsibility, and a fresh start in a city where my family drama hadn't followed me. Jessica was the first person I told. You have to take it, she insisted over celebratory drinks. Though I'll miss our ice cream therapy sessions terribly. I'm scared, I admitted. What if I mess it up? What if I'm only good at my current job because I know it so well? That's normal fear, not your family's voice, she pointed out. Big difference. After accepting the position, I faced the daunting task of informing my family about my impending move. I decided to tell my parents in person, arranging to meet them at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. They arrived precisely on time, my mother's lips pressed into a thin line, my father's expression carefully neutral. We exchanged pleasantries about the weather, the coffee, inconsequential things. I've accepted a position in Denver, I finally said. I'll be moving at the end of next month. My mother's cup clattered against its saucer. Denver? That's nearly 1,000 miles away. The company has an office there. It's a good opportunity. You're running away, my father stated flatly. Because of what happened with the car. I maintained eye contact. I'm moving forward with my career. It has nothing to do with what happened. Of course it does, my mother interjected. You're punishing us for disciplining you. First the police, now this. The familiar twisting of reality made me dizzy, but I held firm. Taking my car without permission wasn't discipline, Mom. It was theft. And this move isn't punishment. It's an opportunity I've earned. We're still your parents, my father said, his voice taking on the authoritative tone that had once made me shrink into myself. We expect to be consulted on major life decisions. I'm 24 years old, I replied calmly. I don't need to consult anyone about my career choices. After everything we've sacrificed for you, my mother began. I appreciate the sacrifices you made raising me, I cut in, surprised to find I actually meant it. Despite everything, they had provided for my basic needs growing up. But that doesn't give you authority over my adult life. My father leaned forward. If you leave like this, don't expect us to welcome you back when things don't work out. The threat hung in the air between us. Once it would have devastated me, the ultimate punishment, parental rejection. Now it felt strangely hollow. That's your choice to make, I said, standing up. I hope you'll reconsider, for your sake as much as mine. I'll always be your daughter, even from Denver. As I walked away, my mother called after me. Amber will be heartbroken. I turned back briefly. Amber already knows. She's helping me pack. The look of shock on their faces was the last image I had of my parents before moving. The relocation to Denver marked the beginning of a new chapter. My apartment overlooking a small park, my office with a view of the mountains, my gradually expanding circle of friends, all of these felt like rewards for the difficult stand I had taken. Amber visited 3 months after I settled in. She had finally moved out of the halfway house into a small studio apartment and was taking community college classes. "They don't know I'm here," she admitted as we hiked through a nearby national park, my Outback parked proudly at the trailhead. "They'd lose it if they knew." "Are things better with them?" I asked. She shrugged. "They're the same. But I'm different. I see the manipulation now, the control. I'm saving up to move out of state too. Maybe not as far as you, but far enough." As we reached a scenic overlook, Amber turned to me. "I need to ask you something. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? Not just for the car, but for everything? For being their weapon against you all those years?" I considered the question carefully. "I've already forgiven you for the car. The rest. I think forgiveness is coming, but it's a process. You were as much a victim of their dynamics as I was, just in a different way. But trust, that's something we'll have to build from scratch." She nodded, eyes bright with tears. "I'd like that, to build something real." 1 year after the day I discovered my car missing, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset paint the Denver skyline in brilliant orange and pink. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica, checking in as she still faithfully did. My new friends from work had invited me to a weekend hiking trip. Lindsay had connected me with a therapist in Denver with whom I was making excellent progress. The journey hadn't been easy. There were still nights I woke from dreams of being back in that old dynamic, powerless and voiceless. There were still moments I doubted my decision to uphold boundaries with my parents. There were still times I wished for the fantasy family I'd never had. But as I looked out over my new city, I felt something that had eluded me for most of my life. Peace. Not the false peace of accommodation and self-erasure, but the genuine peace that comes from living authentically, from knowing your own worth, from refusing to accept mistreatment, even from those who should love you most. My car sat in its designated spot below, just a vehicle, but also a symbol of everything I had fought for: my independence, my boundaries, my right to own things that couldn't be taken from me on someone else's whim. The most valuable thing I gained, though, wasn't the car or even the freedom from toxic family dynamics. It was the knowledge that I could stand up for myself, even when it was heartbreakingly difficult, even when it cost me relationships I had once thought essential. That knowledge had transformed me from someone who endured life to someone who embraced it, challenges, and all. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that cost you a relationship but ultimately led to personal growth? Or have you had to establish boundaries with family members who didn't respect them? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else find the courage to stand up for themselves. And if you found my story helpful or relatable, please like and subscribe for more content about navigating difficult family dynamics and personal growth. Thank you so much for being here with me today, and remember, sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that matter most.